Okay, so I'm going to talk today about beginning beekeeping. I have some equipment over here. I'm going to kind of hold it up. You can come look at it afterwards. I might pass some of the stuff around just so you guys can see it. You may be wondering why someone whose job is ag finance and farm management is doing bees. Well, the answer is that bees are livestock. And during COVID, I apologize, I have a sinus infection. During COVID, a bunch of people got really interested in bees, and so they emailed the entomology department, and the entomology department said, well, honeybees are not native bees, they're an invasive species. We don't have someone that's working on that right now. So really they're livestock, it's ag econ's problem. And so it became my problem. And so I took the opportunity to work on an understudied area. So this is a frame of comb. I just don't like the plastic frames. It's personal preference. So I pulled this out of my hive and replaced it with a wooden frame. So you guys can kind of see, this is damage that I did, like lugging this around with me everywhere. This is probably, I would say, half drawn out. Drawing out is when they take the wax and they build up this comb. And they use this comb to store everything. They use it to store pollen, they use it to store honey, they use it to store baby bees. Typically, they have their own way of arranging their hive. Baby bees will be typically in the center of the hive and in the center of the frame, and they'll store honey around here. As you get towards the outside, you'll have frames that have pollen. As you get even further out, you'll have frames that are just honey. So I'll pass this around so you guys can kind of see. It is kind of spongy and delicate, so just kind of keep that in mind. Here's some wax. I like to pass this around so that you can kind of smell it. I think wax, I don't really love the smell of beeswax, but that's okay. People have gifted me a lot of beeswax candles, and I don't burn them because if you burn them and you're a beekeeper, you have bees in your window wanting to come in. So the reason why we have wax, and I have a bigger block over here, or a block of wax over here, is when you get the frames, they don't have very much wax on them. And so you melt this wax, and then you paint it onto the frames, and that encourages the bees to build out comb. Everyone has their own method. My method is to use a stovetop, and that's why it's like a little tiny little square. I have a stovetop. I take an old pan, I take foil, make it about the size of this wax, put it on top of a burner, and then I can turn off and on the burner, put it on low, melt the wax, and brush, brush, brush. Other people will warm up the wax. It cools really quickly, so I like the burner method just because I can adjust the heat, turn it off, turn it on to keep the wax melted to brush onto the frames. So there's more stuff over there. Okay, so as part of all of this, because I do not do anything halfway, I now have several grants that we're working on building out this work. And so we have, you guys are probably pretty familiar with the OSU Extension website. We have all been struggling with the idea of the website changing some, so it is kind of hard to find stuff. So I would recommend going to, if you just Google OK State Extension, this is the page that comes up. If you go to Programs and Services, we have all of our bigger programs in alphabetical order. And so you can go to livestock, you can go to honeybees, and that will take us to our honeybee page. And so there's videos of me talking about honeybees. There's other resources. We're working on fact sheets right now. Right now we just have the beginning one. The other two are under review with peer review. We're building an online course that'll be available to the public. I'm not 100% sure for classroom use. I don't know if you guys get a special deal on those courses through OSU Extension or not. Anyone know? Okay, so there's like a backyard poultry course. There's going to be this honeybee course. They're usually like $10 or $25 to take. So we're working on that. This is the fact sheet I'm going to kind of start with. It's the beginning honeybee equipment and associated costs, because if you're thinking about starting a beekeeping component to your educational materials, knowing how much it costs and kind of knowing what goes into it and what you're getting into is probably a good place to start. So if you ever want to Google this, you can just go Ag Act 2002, or you can follow the steps I just took, and it's all right there. There is an attachable, fillable Excel budget that will walk you through the startup costs. So if you want to do this with students as an exercise and pretend you're a beekeeper, how much would it cost, you can do the fillable budget and it'll spit out what your costs are. We are working on the component side of that, so we will have a fillable budget for harvesting honey that will also calculate your break-even costs for honey, lip balm, and lotion bars, as well as your cash flow. So it could be a really cool all-in-one sort of lesson without even having to get to the bee part yet. So the Apiary Act is really what kind of governs beekeeping in the state of Oklahoma. So it provides regulations and protections for beekeepers. Beekeepers are actually pretty protected within the state. If you live in town, your HOA can put restrictions on the number of bees that you have. And when I say number of bees, I always mean colonies. So we don't mean like each, like 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000 bees. We mean a colony of bees. That's considered like one head, right? So if you have one head of livestock, a colony is like one head of bees. A colony are the bees inside. The hive is the actual home they live in. And so whenever you start reading about beekeeping, colony is the animal, the hive is the actual equipment. So laws are in place to prohibit county, municipal, and then consolidated government or other political subdivisions from restricting the establishment and maintenance of bees. So the county cannot tell you no bees. Your HOA can tell you only 2 hives, but this is some protection for you. I also think, and this is completely like off the record, if my HOA were to come after me tomorrow, I would print out the Apiary Act and just hand it to them. And I think they're gonna just be so confused, they'll probably just stop. So that's one approach. Having said all this, you still need to be a good neighbor. So consider where you put your hives, and then making sure that they have water is a huge thing. Bees get in trouble when they don't have water, because they will start finding your neighbor's pool, your neighbor's hot tub, your neighbor's kiddie pool. They'll find the outdoor pool at the rec center that's over by, your ag barns. They will find water wherever they can. So even something as simple as a dog bowl with a few pieces of floating wood to provide water for them, that's all they need. Yes. Pond is just as good. Yeah. Not all of us are as lucky to have a pond nearby.
How far will a bee travel for water?
If you think, if you can't stand at the hive and see the water, I would give them water. They can travel 5 miles a day. But if there is water between your water source that you want them to use and their hive, they're going to do the path of least resistance. And they need a lot of water in their daily operation. And so a dog bowl with some floating pieces of wood. I just got mine at Atwood's. It has the big drum thing that I fill up once a month. They don't drink a ton of water, right? You need something floating in there so they don't drown. There's a bunch of fancy, cute ones if you want to do some kind of project with your students. But having water literally at the front step is just my way of avoiding any issues. There's a pond on the other side of my house, but again, I know my neighbor 2 houses down has a pool. They're going to drink there first. Okay, so registration. Beehive registration is voluntary. We have this registration information on the website that I showed you guys earlier. It has the actual forms and everything. It's really easy. There are 3 types of registration. Migratory beekeeper. This is if you're taking bees to California to pollinate the almonds and you're carrying them across state lines. This is probably not going to be you all. Voluntary beekeeper, that's $10. That's what I did. This basically just says I'm a beekeeper. It puts you on the list of the sensitivity map. You can get on that list for free, which is the sensitivity registration. But if you ever get to where your apiary is huge and you have like 10, 20 hives, you may be interested in doing FSA or something like that. So if you have a tornado come through and take out 20 hives, and I will talk about ELAP here in a little bit, you may be interested in ELAP. And to do that, the very first step is to be registered. You have to be registered to participate in any of the FSA programs. And so the first step is to be registered. It's $10. I also just think that's helpful to say, to be able to say, like, yeah, we're registered with the state. It, again, puts you on the sensitivity map. Sometimes it is required for farmers markets. So if you want to sell your honey and other products at the farmers markets, sometimes they require that. Okay, so this is FSA information. This is kind of more for your information when you're kind of talking to people and talking to students. Most people, honestly, I would not recommend getting into all of this unless you have a bigger apiary. So if you only have 1 or 2 hives, like for me, I have 2 hives. That's probably all the bigger I'm going to get. I'm also the advisor of the Oklahoma State Beekeeping Club, so I throw extra bees out here on campus. So they're up to like 15 hives right now. But for me personally, 2 hives is about all I'm going to do. If they were to die tomorrow, I would just say, oh shoot, and start over again. I wouldn't go through the FSA process. But if you are a farmer or rancher and you're adding bees to your operation, it's pretty easy to add your bees to your FSA portfolio that you already have. So it's kind of different depending on what your background is. So ELAP is the Emergency Assistance for Livestock Honeybees and Farm-Raised Fish. This is also the document that begins to state, like, bees are livestock. They're an invasive species, they are livestock. The hive producer, you have to have incurred the loss in the county where the eligible adverse weather event occurred. That language is in there because it's important because there's a lot of people that move beehives across state lines. So you can't have a tornado in your county, but your bees were in Texas and something happened to them there. It has to be happening in this county. They have to have had the event happen here. Events include colony collapse disorder, earthquakes, winter storm, wind, hurricane, basically anything but drought. Some beekeepers are a little upset that drought's not included, but the answer is if there is a drought, you're right, there will be less flowers for the bees. There's less pollen, there's less nectar. However, in a bee's world, sugar and nectar are about the same. So if you're giving them pollen patties, which you can easily buy at Tractor Supply, the internet, or whatever, for their protein source, for their baby bees, if you're feeding them sugar water, which is quite cheap, you can get a hive across a couple months of drought if they need it, if they don't have stores. And so that's kind of, the thought is like, well, you should be able to manage your way through a drought. You can't manage your way through an earthquake, storm, hurricane, etc. 75% for the honeybee and hive losses. So 75% if the bees themselves die, so that's kind of like colony collapse disorder. That's just where you go one day and there's just no bees. And then the hive itself is the actual building they live in. And so if that gets destroyed, it's 75% of that. If you are socially disadvantaged, limited resource, veteran, beginning farmer, all of those great things, you get 90% under this program. Okay, so finding equipment. We were talking a little bit about this earlier. Equipment can be purchased at farm stores, online, through beekeeping stores. It used to be the case that buying equipment through an online bee source was a lot cheaper. So you would buy frames in bulk, you would buy boxes in bulk, they'd come unassembled, you'd have to assemble all of them, and then put them out on your land. Now, because of some weird price stuff going on, it's actually cheaper for me to go to Atwood's, buy a pre-assembled box, paint it, and throw it out on my hive than it is to order from the bee stores. It's just some kind of weird supply chain thing. I don't know if like Atwood's, if they're just had bought all of their stuff so far in advance and the bee stores didn't. I don't know exactly what the explanation for that is, but the answer is shop around. There's a variety of prices and styles, so I'm just giving some example prices today. I took averages. You can go cheap and you can go expensive, but again, you get what you pay for. One thing is to make sure all of your equipment is compatible. So most beekeepers start with what's called a Langstroth hive. I thought maybe I had a picture of it in the next slide is coming up. So you start with a Langstroth hive, and those are those great stackable ones that you see. They come in different depths. And I'll show you a picture and I'll point it out to you. But They do come in different sizes. So there's an 8 frame and there's a 10 frame. Most like Outwoods, Tractor Supply are selling the 10 frame. So just be careful that if you have a 10 frame that you're always buying 10 frame equipment and not 8 frame, because the 8 frame will be smaller and then you'll have a gap and you'll get water in your hive and you'll be very sad. So just if you have a 10 frame hive, which I would recommend because I feel like the 10 frame, there's just more equipment available. If you have a 10 frame hive, just make sure that's what you're buying. Most hives come untreated. The ones I've been buying from Atwoods is not a sponsor of this program. That's just where I went. I've bought from Tractor Supply as well. They both carry the same brand right now. It comes with 1 coat of very thin white paint. You want to get low VOC, volatile organic compounds. The people at Lowe's know what that means. So if you go and you say, I need low VOC, and they say, no, you don't.
I found this on the web.
Sorry. And you say, no, I don't. And they say, why? And you say, I have bees. And they go, oh, no bees. And then they help you. So VOC outdoor paints, it's about $16. And basically what this does is it helps seal your box. If you don't paint your box, it's going to get warped. And when the equipment gets warped beyond what's called bee space, which is 1/8 of an inch, it's a space that bees can walk through. If your equipment becomes warped to where you have extra space, the bees start filling it with stuff, right? Because the bees, if they had their own way, they would live in a different kind of home than what we're providing for them. And so they will fill that with comb, which then makes your life very difficult because when you're trying to pull frames out, and I like to say it's all glued together, which is not the entomology term. It's they have used propolis to connect the pieces of their hive. When I'm working with students, I just said, well, they glued it together, get your hive tool out. So light pastel colors are recommended, especially in the heat here. Mine are pink and blue. You can also just paint them all white. I do think it is nice to have different colored hives so that in your record keeping with students, they can say, the blue hive looks like this today. And I make the college students keep paper records. And our hives are all white, but they're numbered. That's another option. There are some studies that show that painting the hives help the bees find their way home to their original hive. There's a phenomenon called drifting, where bees end up in the wrong hive. So they kind of drift over to the other hive. If it's color-coded, they're like, my house is pink, and they go to the pink house. It just kind of helps everything. I'm obviously kind of being loose with the terminology. Bees don't actually think like that. Okay. I just wanted to double check. So choosing a hive location, well drained with good airflow. You don't want your hive sitting in water because then you will be sitting in water when you have to do hive inspections. Hive inspections in the spring, if you have something going on that you're looking for, can be as frequent as every week. Hive inspections in the summer are about every 2 weeks. Some people do once a month. I like to do every 2 weeks. Once it gets below 50 degrees, the bees don't really come out and you don't want to go in there. In the winter time, you just don't do anything. You can watch them from the outside and just make sure that you see them coming out on warm days to defecate. They will not defecate inside the hive. And so the queen is the only one that defecates inside the hive and other bees clean that up for her. And so on a nice winter day, you want to see bees come out. They poop this gross yellow poop everywhere and they go back in. So that's kind of what you're looking for in the winter, but you're not going to open up that hive. Northern windbreak is ideal. I have friends that have used something as simple as some hay bales. If you're not near water, you need to provide that. We already discussed that. People may recommend using mulch or rock under their hives so you don't have to mow. I also recommend that. I use mulch. People will say, like, well, you'll get hive beetles. I haven't had that problem yet. The one regret I have, I'll show you guys. I wish I would have invested in some better landscaping cloth to go underneath my hives because I have grass growing up through the mulch. And so under the cover of darkness, I go out there and pull it, which is not fun. Elevating your hive needs to be elevated off the ground. Can be as simple as cinder blocks. I really like cinder blocks because they don't rot. Wood, rot. Cinder blocks are pretty cheap too. Cinder blocks, about $7.12 at the time I was looking at this. It's probably higher now. Plywood for the base is $15. Most hives have a screened-in bottom, and so you need something for it to sit on. So it has like 2 long legs and a screened-in bottom, so it needs a stable base to sit on. Given the wind in Oklahoma, either put a big rock on top of them or actually use a tie down. So here's my setup when I first started. The blue hive is my first hive. The pink hive is a swarm that I caught that ended up almost being the death of me, and we'll get into that in a minute. This is taken from my husband's office window. And so it's kind of whimsical looking because it's a window in my house and people go out and look at it all the time. So it doesn't have to be as cutesy as this. They don't need their own little privacy fence from the other bees and things like that. This is what it looks like now. I need to go out there. Spoiler alert, the pink hive turned out to be very, very aggressive and very productive, if you notice how tall that hive is right now. So I haven't been able to get out there and weed around it because I got stung 15 times. And my husband got stung 17 times. And I will talk about suit quality here in a minute. So this is a picture from like yesterday. So this box right here is called a deep box. This is as big as they get. I have 2 deeps. My intention was to use the top deep as a honey super. So my idea was, okay, in the winter, I'm going to shove all these bees back down into that bottom box, and I'm going to take all of this honey. I don't know why I thought I was like Winnie the Pooh and I needed all this honey, but the moral of the story is I'm going to leave these 2 boxes, and I'm going to leave these 2 boxes for these bees, and they can just enjoy, and I'm just going to harvest the honey supers. Because those honey supers, which are these like smaller boxes, they're about this, those are still about 40 pounds. And this one up here is full. So that's already full of honey. It needs to be capped. They're drawing out this. This honey super here was about halfway full when I checked last weekend. So how much honey does one person need? So I'm going to leave it for the bees. Okay. Feeding your hive. Most beekeepers will feed their bees during certain times of the year. Typically, it's 1-to-1 sugar to water ratio in the spring. In the fall, it's 2-to-1 to stimulate brood rearing. Brood is baby bees. It's 1-to-2. And all of this is in the fact sheet, like super nicely written out as well. So if you get kind of behind or you want to take notes, feel free to take notes, but it's also written out there. Most beekeepers will feed a new hive until nectar flow begins. If you go on Facebook, which I'm not sure I even recommend at this point, because honestly, the Facebook beekeeping groups are pretty mean. They're really mean to new people. They're like, have you taken a class? You ask one question. You're like, does a queen? And like, have you taken a class? You have a mentor? Have you done all these things? You shouldn't get bees unless you're ready. Okay, this is why I'm doing this, right? Because I want to be inclusive and kind and help people and not just be a gatekeeper. They will forever be talking about the nectar flow. They're like, the nectar flow is happening, it's about to happen, it's gonna happen, it's ending, I don't know. I look outside and I see tons of flowers. And there's people saying like, well, I saw one of my bees got into some Mountain Dew and that means nectar flow must be over. I don't know. I know. Like my zinnias are just now blooming. I think it's fine. So you do you is the answer. Okay. So these are actual screenshots from that fact sheet that I keep referencing, which it would have been smart if I would have printed everyone out a copy. So right now we're looking at, we have the original, honestly, like if you were to buy a kit, this is pretty much what it starts with. A brood box with frames, a vented inner cover, a telescoping outer cover, bottom board, and an entrance reducer is about $120. I have my hive stand, my concrete boxes, all of that stuff. Ratchet strap, it's about $156. This is the, sorry, swivel. They probably want me to stand here. This is the entrance reducer. This is the wide entrance. This is the narrow entrance. Everything in beekeeping is controversial. I'm sorry I keep sighing, but I sigh because it's a lot of drama. people will say, well, when you have a new hive, they're weak, and you have to make sure you have an entrance reducer on there. Okay, fine. Then other people will turn around and say, you're impeding their natural ability to ventilate their own hive with an entrance reducer, and now you're going to have excess moisture buildup, and it's going to slow them down. Or if you use a queen excluder, they're going to go through the queen excluder, and it's going to cause their wings to have damage, and your bees won't last as long. They live 2 months in the summer anyways, so I don't know. To each their own. For everything that you say, someone says you need to do this, another person will say don't do it. It's not very data driven. It's not like beef cattle where we've had extension working on it for 100 years and we know exactly when to replace the bull. We don't have that data for beekeeping. And so a lot of it is to trust your own instincts, do your best, probably find a mentor, or at least someone to have these crazy discussions with. So this is the excluder. Clearly it's not on my hive right now because I have it in my hand. I pulled it off. I left it off. People put them back on in the winter because they say, oh, they get cold in the winter. Bees live in Minnesota. And I also kind of take the approach of, if you're not going to make it, then I'll just find new friends that will. Probably not the best approach, but I do want bees, I want genetics that meet my management style. And the way you change your bee genetics is by changing your queen. And so, for example, my super aggressive hive was not meeting my management style. So I took that queen out, I squished her, and I put a new one in. And then in 2 months, you have all new bees, and your life is great. So that is my approach. Take it or leave it. I have a whole think piece about what I learned from leadership.
How do you get the bees, though?
We're getting there. Don't you worry. Oh, we order them, and the male people hate you. Okay, so we have an external feeder, and this is all stuff, and the reason why we haven't gotten to the bees yet is because this is everything you need to consider before you even buy bees. You need to have everything set up, ready to go. Because if you're trying to paint your boxes and get your feeders in and do all this stuff the day you get bees, no. It's very bad. Very bad. Okay, external feeder. Everything's controversial. I like them. They're outside. I have a picture window that I stare at them. I like to see what they're eating. It's fun for me. I can go out there every day and change out their feeder. If your bees are further out, you are going to want a bigger feeder like this. It sits inside your box like this and has a little ladder that they can climb out of. Some will drown. Leave the drowned ones in there. They will help save their friends with their dead bodies. Don't let it go rancid. Don't let it go rancid, but I'm just saying, don't fish them out because that's another lifeboat for them. This holds, there are millions of bees in this hive. When I first started, I was like super precious about it, and I like squashed one and was like, oh no, Dolores. And now I'm like, get out of the way. We're moving on. So these internal feeders are nice because they hold more. You have to refill it less. The external feeders also sometimes promote robbing, allegedly, between hives. I don't know. Mine are in a super protective area, so I don't worry about that so much. This is the key that no one will tell you, and the mean Facebook people will definitely not tell you. Remove a frame to put the internal feeder in. Because you will be staring at it, and you're going to go, how does this go in here? You take a frame out. You put the feeder in. Why no one on Facebook can answer this question and be kind is beyond me. Okay, so there's that. Here's other equipment that you should probably have. This swivel is not.
Hit the middle button, the center. Ouch.
Aha! Okay, perfect. This is a bee brush. I don't use this. My husband has been dragged into this hobby against his will. He loves this, mostly because he like gets the bees to sit on it and he watches them and talks to them while I'm doing the work. And he's like, oh, you're so cute, good job. And then he makes sure that they like are out of my way so I kill less of them when I put the boxes back on. Take it or leave it, bee brush. Hive tool. Everyone has a favorite. There's really two types. This one's mine. I like it. This one's my husband. It has a hook. He likes this one. Honestly, I think it's whatever someone handed you when you first started doing hive inspections, that's what you feel comfortable with. I keep multiples of both for students because some, it's just easier than others. This is a hive beetle trap. Hive beetles have been described to me by an entomologist as the golden retriever of the bee world. They are this little brown beetle that will eventually invade your hive, but the bees think are cute and feed them. So what you do is you fill this with oil. You put this between the frames. The hive beetles fall in into the oil. The bees cannot. You'll know if you have hive beetles because you can see them. They're big enough to see. Other people put dryer sheets, or not dryer sheets, the Swiffer, thank you. They tear up Swiffer and put it in the corners, and the hive beetles get stuck in the Swiffer. This is a smoker. I would recommend getting a nicer one. There are cheap ones, but they only last a season. I don't smoke my bees very much. If I'm harvesting, I would, or when that hive turned out to be cuckoo, I did use smoke, but when you smoke them, they go down into the hive, and if you're looking for your queen, it makes it harder to look for your queen. Personal opinion, not backed by data or science. Okay, extra wax, you're gonna need that to do your frames. I did not wax a box because I thought I was too cool for school, and the bees refused to draw it out. So then I had to take the box off, brush all the bees off, and then wax it and put it back on, and then they filled it. So follow the rules. I like to use chicken litter for my smoker. It catches fire really quickly and it's very smoky. Frame grabber, this is super nice for like the first frame or so, especially if you have bigger hands. Once you've dislodged the frame, you can then grab it and lift it up. Where's the frame? Well, you can imagine. You grab it and you lift it up. Okay. This is the frame holder. This, if you're gonna buy one extra thing that you don't really need, this is it. This is amazing. I couldn't bring my box today because my dolly didn't have tires that worked. Pretend this is our box. And we have frames. This sits on the outside like this. And then when you have your, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
When you have your frame, you pull it out and you put it in here like this. And it hangs. And then as you're working through your box and looking at what you need to look at, now you have more room. So I typically hang about 3 frames from here. Do not hang baby bees from here. Try and hang honey or other stores or empty frames. If you have baby bees in the first like 3, start from the other side because you don't want them out in the elements. You want them protected with their thermoregulated and their nurse bees and all that stuff. I watched a college student put a frame of baby bees face down in the grass. So, queen clip. I used to not keep one of these in my pocket. And then I had the crazy evil queen jump out and walk across the grass and try and make a break for it. You have one queen. My husband, thankfully, I'm not coordinated, grabbed her in his glove and put her back in the hive, but now I carry a queen clip. Queen excluder. People like these, people don't. I got into trouble with it because I thought, okay, they built up some comb in my honey super, and I'm gonna put this queen excluder on, and now instead of having baby bees in my honey super, I'm gonna only have honey. Well, my bees were like, we don't like this plastic thing. We refuse to go through it. Now we feel like we don't have enough room, so we're gonna swarm. Swarming is when the queen and a group of bees, more than you want, leave, and they leave the original hive to build a new queen. So, during the best time to make honey, half my bees just left because they didn't want to go through this plastic. So that hive doesn't have one. Just left. I have pictures, don't worry, it's coming. Okay, obtaining the bees. Purchase a package. Purchase a nuke. For both, I will show you what those things are later. For both packages and nukes, reservations usually start around January. January. If it is springtime and you are looking for bees, 50-50 shot. Catching a swarm.
Can you start one later in the fall?
No.
Why?
There's like a whole saying, it's like, catch a swarm in May, it's worth a bundle of hay. Catch a swarm in July. It sucks. I don't know how it goes. But there's some saying. Your grandparents probably know it. No, so the problem is, when you start a new hive, they have to build out comb. So before they can store reserves, they have to build out comb. If you have a giant apiary and you have a bunch of comb that you've let bees build out and you have stored up in your freezer, getting there, then maybe you could. But the amount of time and resources, it takes about 5 pounds of honey to build 1 pound of comb. Comb is the most valuable thing you have. And so to start that late in July, especially because July is dearth, meaning there's not a ton of flowers, most people just say, like, throw them in the garbage. They're not going to work. You could fold them into a weaker hive. There are things to do. If you were to catch a swarm in July, you could potentially remove that queen, combine them with a weaker hive. There's things that you can do, but my recommendation for starting is reserve with someone in January, get good genetics that are going to be really docile because you're working with students, pick them up in May, and have a great summer.
Is there a goal, like on that nude, you get 10 frames?
Yep.
You know, when you get that nude, you only have maybe 4 or 5 of those frames. No, what is there an actual goal before the season, or you want to have that whole?
They will shock you. They will shock you. So especially for comb, I would feed sugar to build out comb. You don't really want to feed sugar to build out honey. People say it tastes different. They'll call it funny honey. I don't know. It tastes like honey to me. A bee barfed it up. But people will say it's different. And so you tend to not feed sugar when there is honey flow happening. But if they're building comb and it's a brand new package or a brand new hive, yeah, feed the sugar. Let them build. Let them build it out. Okay, packaged bees, $163. Only contains bees, including a queen. Does not include frames. So there's no drawn comb, brood, honey, or pollen stores. They can be shipped directly to you in the mail. It is less expensive, easier to handle, no brood disease. The cons are it's slower turnover time and additional feed requirements. You will have to feed them some sugar to help them build up that comb to get started. This is what I did because I did it a little too late, and this is all that was available. These guys came from Texas. That little cage, there's one over here, it's a queen cage. That's what the queen comes in. It's really cute. There's a little cork in there. She has a few attendants. You remove the cork. Don't use a nail. If you have a little bit of thought, use a wine opener. Third attempt, that's what we came up with, my friend and I. Use a wine opener, and then you put a mini marshmallow in there. And the bees will remove the mini marshmallow by eating it over the course of 24 hours to release their queen. And that just makes sure that they have some stuff built out and they're actually going to stay with you instead of just flying away. Because unlike cattle, these guys can just leave any day. I could go home and have no bees. All right, so there's the package. You shake them out. There's a cloud of bees. It's terrifying. You put the package on the ground and they go in. Nukes, $207, a little bit more expensive, but you're getting more resources. So you have frames, adult bees, comb with eggs and brood, stored honey and pollen, and usually a reproductive or laying queen. So your queen is like ready to go laying eggs. Cannot be shipped because it's like in a tote. It's like in this weird tote. It can be purchased locally. It's easy to transfer. Pick up the frames, you put them in your box. Frame them out in the box. Cons may contain disease, spores, and pesticide residue. This is what it looks like. It's like a weird little tote. These, I think, are a little bit nicer. Honestly, if you're starting out and you don't have resources to trade with other people, by resources, I mean comb, I would recommend getting a nuke. They're more expensive, but there's a better success rate. Swarms, you can capture a swarm. Usually in the late spring, early summer. Oklahoma State Beekeeping Club has caught 5 swarms already this year from people who call in. They're free, other than your time and the stings you might get. I catch swarms with students, so you can imagine the mayhem. Con, you can't always find one. You don't know the pedigree or temperament of the captured bees. My new stance, because I never sent them away to get them tested, I cannot say that they are Africanized. However, I got stung 15 times through my suit. My husband got stung 17 times through his suit. So my recommendation is let them get established and requeen, because the aggressive bees, you don't know. Like, we caught this swarm in June. They were fine all summer. This spring, nasty. You don't know their true temperament until they've gotten big enough to show it. And so I would just requeen. If you're working with students, don't take the risk. Squish the queen, put the new queen in. In the state of Florida, it's required. They have so many Africanized bees there, absolutely required. This is the swarm we caught, the very first one. They were my own bees because I overmanaged. I fed them way too much and they swarmed. This is the box. We are catching them. That didn't work, so we got the bee vacuum. And the student told me that it was right and I was using it correctly. I'd never used a bee vacuum before. And he had it calibrated incorrectly and I killed a ton of bees. This is the aggressive a la Africanized hive. What you'll notice here is the amount of bees covering. This is their own feeder that had been sitting there. I put new sugar in it, they attacked, they covered. That's how you get stung a lot. And they're in your face. They want to sting you in the eye. All bees do. All bees want your eyes. So close your eyes. I'm making this sound so much fun, I'm sure. But I've been stung in the eye, and anyways, close your eyes. So once you get all of this equipment together, you're really looking at about $458 for the absolute necessary need it now items. Within the first year, you're probably going to need a second brood box or some honey supers. You have optional items, the queen excluder, internal hive feeder, all these things that we've been talking about. Future purchases, additional honey supers. The paint, if you get a small can, that'll last you forever. But a lot of this other stuff. So now for all the other things, you're looking at $684. This is the beginning honey beekeeping equipment cost fillable sheet. It's on Excel. It's on that website. So your students can play around and kind of see if you want to design your hive differently, what it might cost. I'm going to go through this like super quick. I wasn't sure how chatty we would all be today. This is product harvesting, and they can make these slides available to you guys if we can. Yeah, so we can do that. You basically have to determine when to harvest, leave enough for the bees, so 40 to 60 pounds is recommended in Oklahoma. I have a student that weighs everything. I don't weigh things. I'm going to leave them those 2 boxes. I'm sure that's enough. They're full. Rule of thumb, a deep frame is about 6 pounds, so 1 frame is 6 pounds. A medium is 4 pounds. So also keep that in mind when you're working with younger students and they're picking up these frames. You are holding, with gloves on, a 7-pound thing with buzzing bees that are making it heavier. So it is by no means light. I recently had my gallbladder removed, and I couldn't do any of this. I coached from the sidelines because even to pick up that frame like this was too much core strength needed. Remove the frames from the hive, smoke or gently shake the bees. You can use repellent. You uncap the honey. Again, we're talking more money. Electric uncapping knife is about $130, or you can take a serrated knife and dip it in hot water. You are not harvesting in your first year, which is why this is at the end. And if we really ran out of time, I would just say, talk to me later, give me a call, because you're not doing this your first year. This is second year stuff, which is why it's really hard to get bees to cash flow. Yes?
Real quick, have you seen those flow hives, or what's the,
Yep.
does
That will,
cost, are those any good?
they're very expensive.
Right.
They're very expensive. They also only save you labor on when you go to harvest honey. You still have to do all the inspections. You still have to add boxes. When something breaks, each one of those frames, I looked at them, I think they're like $25 to $50 each, and a regular frame is like $3. So I'm having trouble seeing the benefit, especially, you just saw my hive. I have 3 of those boxes stacked. You would need to buy 3 of those expensive flow hive components to harvest that honey. So I'm not seeing it. You can easily buy some of the stuff, so like the extractor, there's a crush and strain method that's much cheaper. You can start sharing this equipment across districts. And if you join one of these beekeeping clubs, they typically have this equipment that you can rent out. Keep in mind, everyone's trying to rent it out at the same time. So you strain it, it rests, you fill it with honey. This is the slide I wanted you to see. If you're harvesting less than 500 gallons of honey within the first year, you are not considered commercial. You're in the state of Oklahoma, you harvest over 500 gallons, you're commercial, you need to be inspected. Otherwise, you just have to have common food product name, the net weight, your name, phone number, and address, and this statement, bottled or packaged in a facility not inspected by the Oklahoma Department of Health. And that is it.
You're covered.
If you produce 501 gallons of honey, you have to be inspected. I think one fell on the ground and spilled if you produced 501 gallons. Okay. Cosmetic labeling laws. This is if you make the lip balms or the lotion bars. You have to have the name of the products, identification, and its intended use, warning label for misintended use, net quantity of ingredients, directions for safe use, warnings, name and address of the business, and then list of ingredients ordered by prominence. Most of these things, the fact sheet we have coming out actually has some recipes in it and kind of explains in grave detail how you can make these. It would be a really fun project to do with students. Even the college kids get really into it. They made Easter lotion bars. They made little bunnies and eggs and sold them. They had a blast. But it's not hard, and it's like 3 or 4 ingredients. So the only issue is wax is your most precious thing in your hive. And so this is not a project that you would probably do until like year 3 or 4, once you have enough stuff stored up that you feel comfortable using wax for this. Questions? These are my bees. And oh, I didn't mention this before, suits come in a wide variety of quality. When we first got started, this is a suit from Amazon. It was $30. It came with gloves. It's canvas. Bees can sting through canvas if it's touching your skin. So the idea is that this is big and like airy enough that they'll sting the canvas and won't touch your skin. When you're actually working bees, and if you have like Popeye forearms like me, when you're really strong and you're picking up these frames, that suit gets close to your skin and then they sting you. And then your wrists and your elbows are this big and you have to go to the university doctor. So then you wise up and your husband says, I'm going to quit helping you if you don't do something different. And you get this suit, and this one is $150, but do you see how it's breathable and how amazing that would be, and how it has mesh on both sides, and then it has this foam, and the foam is the depth of a bee stinger, and so they can never sting you through this, even if it's close up against your skin. I got this from the beekeeping store in Oklahoma City.
That's the one I've been trying to find.
Yeah, and they're like not open on the weekends. I had them ship it and I was like, if this doesn't fit, can I send it back? And they said yes. But here's the issue. If you don't zip up your suit, bees will get in your suit. And I didn't think I had to tell my grown husband that, but you know, stuff happens and you get a bee in your suit, and especially students, the college kids. I had them find a buddy and inspect each other, which college kids like anyways, but you need to have someone make sure that you have your suit zipped up.
So what would you call that suit, like if you were looking for that? Foam mesh?
You go on if you go on their website, they'll have it and it'll just be there. They also make just a jacket. I don't have any pants that are appropriate, that are like baggy enough to not get stung. Not that they're inappropriate pants, but you know, pants that are baggy enough. So
So do the bad bees sting you through that pool?
no. This is why I have this one. They stung me through this. Also, no bananas. Do not let anyone eat bananas and then open a beehive. It smells like their alarm pheromone and they will get stung really badly.
Unless you don't like the person.
So, okay.
Thank y'all so much. If you will scan this evaluation on your way out before you head to the next one, or if you're staying in here, scan it. We'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, everything is on for